Well, I got my Mac is in my.
It's on a PC, it's on a Mac. It's got a mic. It's good. The mic's here too, so lots of wordplay this morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm Steve Coxon, Vice President and Speaker Chair for MassI, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Anthony Mazeroll. He is in from California, but he divides his time between Soka University, where he's a professor, and Peru, where he is working to fight the good fight against the invasive blue grame, which he was telling me all about in the car this morning. And I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit more about that now. So take it away.
Sure. Thank you guys for inviting me. So, map of Peru, just because you should know a map of Peru. So let me just talk a little bit about me as a hobbyist. I've been a hobbyist since I was 7 years old. So that's 57 years. I'm 64, just turned 64. Luckily my wife allows, or I guess allows, or, you know, she tolerates, yeah, whatever you want. But since we live in California, Southern California, we really don't have to worry about our winter times very much. So she allowed me to convert our 2-car garage into a fish room. I've kept most freshwater fishes. At one point, I was breeding bettas to enter into the IBC competition. But when you have about 1,000 jars that you have to change water every other day, that got really old, so I decided after a couple of years I did not want to do that anymore. Discus they're my favorite fish. They're the logo to our research center. I breed discus, not basically a sale, just as a hobby, and so I've always kept discus. The pride of joy used to be this 500-gallon corner tank that I built about 20 years ago. I used to have 2 125-gallon tanks in a corner, and I talked to my wife. I said, you know, if you let me have one tank, we can get rid of these 2 tanks. She didn't realize that I wanted to build this monstrosity of a thing. So that front glass panel is 7 feet long, 4 feet tall, and the back 2 corners are 4 feet themselves. It took 8 adult men an hour to move the tank from outside 20 feet into the house. That thing weighed, it was heavy. It went through lots of evolution. When I first set it up, I set it up as a tanganique and cichlid tank. There was probably 100, 150 fish in there. They all, you know, of course, when you take a picture, they all go hide in the rocks. There's 1,000 pounds of rock in that tank at that time, and I put each one in by hand. That's why I had back surgery. So when I want to change it out, I throw in my grandson. You know, he's a lot more nimbler than I am, so he would be my cheap labor. And so it went through lots of evolution, you know, have some plants on top, wild angels that I collected in Peru, and of course wild discus that I collected in Peru as well. And you know, every 2 or 3 years I get tired of what's in it and I change it around to different things. So I'm a hobbyist first and foremost, but I'm also a scientist. I am Executive Director of the Amazon Research Center for Ornamental Fishes in Iquitos, Peru. Again, there's Peru. Iquitos is in the northeast corner of Peru, surrounded by 3 rivers. The main Amazon River here, so that's the Amazon. To the south is the Itaya River, and to the north is the Rio Nanay. Iquitos is the largest city in South America that you can't drive to. The only way you can get to Iquitos is fly or take a boat. It's about 700,000 people, so it's a fairly large city. And as it goes, and it's really left to itself. The government kind of just ignores the Iquitos because it's out in the middle of nowhere. So here's Iquitos, our research center. This is the most recent Google map. If you go into Google Earth or Google Maps and type in Amazon Research Center for Ornamental Fishes, you'll actually come up with this. So we've made it big by being in Google. So this is the research center as it appeared last year. I know it's last year because we have additional ponds here, research ponds that we dug last summer. You first come in, this is the office complex with our laboratory. This large building is one big fish lab, so it's raceways or cement raceways and hundreds of tanks. We do have dormitories. When I built this dormitories originally, I wanted them to be comfortable, but I also wanted them to be American comfortable. There's a difference between comfortable and American comfortable. I'm an old man. I like my hot water. I like air conditioning. So we have 4 double occupancy rooms, each with their own bathroom, hot and cold running water, a ceiling fan, and a nice air conditioner that works just fine. We do have a kitchen facility. And so the dormitories are used for research scientists who come, spend time at the research center. We also house our interns and our volunteers. So anybody want to do an internship at the research center, we ask you for 3 weeks of your time. We feed you and house you. You just have to get there. So if you want to do that, come talk to me. This big building here is now our public aquarium. We opened the public aquarium in January of this year, and I'll go through the pitfalls of opening a public aquarium. So this is from our website. Really, we take a 3 or 4 pronged approach to this. We're there to do conservation research and conservation work for the area. We are an education center. We go out to the schools and do environmental education, and we are there to support research from the Peruvian standpoint and from foreign scientists, in other words, non-Peruvian scientists to come work in the Amazon. One of the things that's happening in Peru right now, and it's happening all over the world, is the overcollection of fishes, specifically overcollection of aquarium fishes. We don't think about that too much, what's happening to the fishes that we keep, but specifically in Peru, there is a massive overcollection of some of the aquarium fishes. Some of the fishes that used to be abundant now are not abundant. One fish I have a picture of, the chameleon loricarid. The fishermen used to go out in a day and catch 100, 200 and bring them back. Now they're going out for 4 or 5 days and catching 10, 11, 12. Because when this fish was first brought into the hobby, everybody wanted it. There is another chameleon loricarid from Colombia that's, they think it's the same species, no one really knows yet, that is a viable fish, but people seem to want the Peruvians more than they want the Colombians, and in fact the Colombian loricarids are probably a third the price than the Peruvian loricarids right now. We also go out to the villages and teach the fishermen how to raise their own fish. One thing that happens in Peru, the only time you can collect fish as a fisherman is when there's low water. So for 4, 5, 6 months out of the year, they have no income. So we've gone to the fishing associations and taught them how to build ponds. The water table here is so high that in 2 days, the ponds are filled with water. They clear up after about a week, and then they can collect their fish. We're not telling them don't collect fish, but here's another steady means of income. You don't have to over-collect to get that same amount of money, or you don't have to go out and do logging or some other destructive means of making your money, but you can breed these fish. And I want to bring in Project Piaba, a good organization, but that's really what separates us from Project Piaba. Project Piaba says, you know, catch a fish, save a tree, because they're looking at the cardinal tetra. The cardinal tetra, you know, it's a cockroach of the river. I mean, all the tetras are that way. They produce massive amounts of young. You collect them, they're going to come back next year. Well, many of the fishes that are being collected in Peru, the epistogrammas, the loricarids, aren't that way. You can over-collect and decimate the populations. Well, we've shown that by bringing these fish into captivity and sustainably breeding them in captivity, you can have both a constant supply of wild fish without hurting the wild-caught stocks. And so that's what separates us and Piaba. Besides, Piaba has been around for 100 years. We've only been around for 10 years. This is one of the fish we work with. This is the normal red pencilfish. They call it red pencilfish 1. It is exported out of Iquitos. This is a critically endangered fish. It is considered a critically endangered by the IUCN, primarily because, not necessarily overcollection, but overcollection does cause some problems, but the fact that the areas that they are found in are being cut down. They live in the flooded forest most of the year. All those areas are being cut down for agriculture these days, oil, and gold. So there's a major problem in that area with extracting oil and extracting gold. 2 years ago, there was a UFO scare in the area. These young villager boys were attacked by aliens, and they cut their faces. Now, the Peruvians, the villagers, are really, really superstitious. And so what it was the oil workers pretending to be aliens, attacking these kids, and what happened after that is the village emptied. So it's an easy way to get rid of the population without actually, you know, killing them or destroying their homes. They just vacate their homes because they think now that this place is cursed. And there, you go to YouTube and look UFOs in Peru, and there was a whole hour-long episode of a UFO story about this UFO, these aliens that they saw in Peru. I believe in aliens, but I don't think they were there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my work that I do. I work on invasive species in Peru. We look at blue gourami. So right now we have blue gouramis that are invasive. We have guppies that are invasive. Guppies are invasive all over the world. And I'll briefly mention another fish that we're really worried about. Gourami were brought into Iquitos in the 70s to be raised on farms, particularly one fish wholesaler or fish exporter brought them into his ponds. The ponds flooded. The fish were basically deposited into the river, and from that they had 100 pairs of gouramis. From that, now there are billions of gouramis in Iquitos. So, typical gourami, blue gourami, two-spot gourami, whatever you want to call it. I call it Satan. We know, you know, the normal distribution of gouramis here in yellow, where they're found now. We can put Peru as well. India now considers them a native fish. They're naturalized, and that's one of the fish they export out of India as part of their exporting fish trade. So this is the gourami distribution just within the city limits of Iquitos. The original distribution of this fish started in this area here. And so you can see that they're found both in the Rio Nanai here and the Rio Itaya. So we've actually collected gouramis at each of these locations all along the shore here. And we don't collect one or two. We throw a small seine and we collect 1,000 at a time. Now, some of these small channels are probably some of the worst water you can ever find. These are open sewage systems for these people, and that's where the gourami love to live, where really no other fish is found. The water is very anoxic, no oxygen, ammonia levels out the wazoo, as you can imagine, phosphates, you name it, that's not good water. And it gets really, really hot. In the summer times, it gets up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And these fish think it's a day in the park. You know, when there's no oxygen in the water, most of the other fish die. Well, gouramis have that labyrinth organ. They come to the surface to breathe. They don't have any problems. And when they breed, there's no one there to compete with them. So they're really just going out to town here. And during the rainy season, this whole area floods. So I'll show you a picture of a home. You can see they're on stilts. So this whole area floods. They get into the main river channel and they're transported all over the place. So this is one of those channels. You know, it has that nice aroma that you want every morning when you want to go out fishing. And so this is the area that I showed in that slide with the little channels running through. You can see that the water level does fluctuate a lot here. When it's the rainy season, water level raises about 40 to 50 feet. In the dry season, in the midst of the dry season, this whole area is going to be dry. And so this is where we find the gouramis just loving life. And you can see a gourami right in the middle to show, yes, if we geotag that, it would show you it's in Iquitos. Not the best water either. Look at all the garbage. That's a problem they have, but there's some nice little tetras in here you could collect, and some guppies, you name it, we got it here. So we're going to look at two things that help the gourami survive. One's the reproduction, one's the competition for food. So let's first start for reproduction. You know that gouramis are bubble nesters. And in many cases, it's going to be the male that sticks around and protects the eggs and the young to begin with. One thing we do in science is calculate what's called the gonadal-somatic index, the GSI, and we take the weight of the gonads of the fish compared to their body weight. If these fish have one spawning season, you would expect to have a curve like this. So very little gonad weight during most of the year. During the spawning season, the gonad weight goes up considerably and then back down to zero. If you have a fish that spawns all year long, basically you're going to have like this, just up and down. So the gonad weight stays relatively high all year long. So what we did is we caught 50 gourami every 2 weeks, sacrificed them. We sacrificed them to the science gods. We examined the gonads, and we only looked at females because females are the ones that show the most dramatic GSIs. So that's the ovaries of a female gourami, and you can barely see the little eggs in them. There's probably 1,000 eggs right in that gonad right there. And this is what we got. We got some highs and lows in our gouramis, but overall during the year, it stayed relatively constant. We do get some of these really major dips here, and that was a major dip because we couldn't find any females. The fishermen just bring us the fish. We tell them we want 50. They go out and collect 50. Then we have to see how many females are in that group. And lots of times there may be only 4 or 5 females out of that 50. So it's a hit and miss proposition. So the gouramis are breeding all year long, where the fishes there in the Amazon only breed during that one pulse of high water mark. Look at food, so just so you can see what the intestine of a gourami looks like. You know, by looking at the intestinal tract of any fish, you can tell what it eats right away. A long intestinal tract means it's probably going to be an herbivore or a detritivore. Short, it's a carnivore, because if you're going to eat plants, it takes a long time for your body or your gut microbes to break down the plant material. So in Southeast Asia, gouramis basically eat everything. They insect larvae, copepods, cladocerans, ostracods, aquatic plants, terrestrial plants, and detritus. So what you do is you cut open the fish, you take out all their gut contents, and you piece your way through every bit of stuff that you can see. And then you try to analyze what it is. And so this is where we collected them. And this is the gut contents of the fishes that we found with the gourami. So here are the gouramis. Dyneema is a porthole catfish. Stenix, one of the tetras. Pictus cat, some small cyclosomas. Triportheus, what they call, some people call the giant hatchet fish, but it's not a hatchet fish at all. This is banjo cat. So you can see when we caught him, we caught a rather large assortment of fish, but most of the fish we caught were the gouramis. And you can see what they eat. They're eating a lot of stuff. And this other category is things like we found fish scales, we found rice, we found pieces of carbon, charcoal, because the water that they're swimming in is the water that the people use to wash their dishes. And so they're picking up anything they can eat. So the fish scales are not scale eaters, but they're eating the scales that are on the plates after you wash them off and everything. So most of those are going to be just garbage, so to speak. Now, if we look at what fish they're in competition with, these are the fish they're in competition with. You calculate what's called a Schoner's index. I won't go through it. It's an easy calculation. But anything above 60% means that they're in direct competition. So the fish that they're mostly in competition with is this cyclosoma, that's Triportheus here. That's the giant hatchet fish. Pictus cat, porthole, banjo, one of the little tetras, Ethrinus, which is the small wolffish, and the red-tailed calceus. So they're in direct competition with these fish for food. And in fact, their gouramis are out competing these fish. When you put them in a tank and figure out who's going to eat most, the gouramis are eating more than any of these fish when you put them together in tanks. So the moral of the story, kill every gourami you can see. So the gouramis are here to stay in Peru. There's nothing you can do with it. In fact, the government has tried to use the gourami to their advantage. Gouramis are now used in the Arapima industry to stock Arapima farms, the aquaculture ponds with gourami, so it gives the Arapima a nice live food source. But the problem is that they may be introducing parasites. We have done some parasite work as well, and these gouramis are just filled with parasites. At one point, the government wanted to take the gourami and stock them all over the Amazon in areas that Arapima have been found to try to increase the number of wild Arapima. We talked them out of that real quick. And so what we're trying to do is prevent other fish from entering the system. And unfortunately, one of the fish we're really worried about is tilapia. In Peru, they don't like to eat tilapia, but in many aquaculture facilities, they stock tilapia because the tilapia will eat the plant material, the algae that grows in the tanks, but they don't realize when you put these tilapia in these ponds, they're also eating the food that's supposed to be going to your fish. There's thousands of examples of this happening. And unfortunately, we are collecting tilapia in the river now. And once tilapia become established, they will outcompete everything. So, our main goal at the Amazon Research Center is environmental education. We truly believe that's how you change people's mind, is not through the adults, it's through the kids. And so what we've done, my wife developed a mascot called Nalda, which means strength, and her buddy Eduardo that she captured from the evil gringo poachers that were there to poach birds. She is designed after the Bora tribe, which is one of the local tribes there in Iquitos. And my wife actually wrote a book that we use in Iquitos when we go to the schools called The Adventures of Nalda and Eduardo. It's an activity book, and it tells the story of Nalda, who actually was a pink dolphin. There in the Amazon, there's this idea that pink dolphins are the sirens. They change into women that will kind of persuade the men to go into the water to kill them. In this case, we're saying this pink dolphin is a good person, not a bad pink dolphin. And so we go to schools, we go to all the elementary schools in the area, and this is right after COVID. We have them go through the workbook and stuff, and we have our team of volunteers that read the story to the kids, and the kids act out the stories as well. But this past year, for the past 4 years, we've been trying to open up the Aquarium of the Amazon. This is how it appeared for about 2 or 3 years because COVID hit and we had to stop. We couldn't go to Peru. Peru completely closed their borders. And you couldn't even enter into the country. If you were in the country, it was really hard to leave. And so what we did, because my mind said that why spend all the money buying tanks that you had to import in? Why don't we make our own tanks? Because, I made my 500-gallon tank that lasted me 20 years. I finally took a chainsaw and broke it apart a month ago because I'm retiring and we're moving out of state, and that would cost too much to move that thing. So we built our tanks out of plywood and 2x4s like I did at home. We built some really large tanks, lots of them, big tanks, small tanks, double window tanks. This is just out of 4x4s. That's a discus tank. Then we had to fiberglass them. Fiberglass rosin, fiberglass mats, and then after that we applied 2-part epoxy, water potable epoxy. This is actually in our extremely large 20-foot long aquarium that we have there that has a 4-inch, 5-inch plexiglass panel that we imported. So it's we went all out for it. And so, we applied 5 or 6 layers of everything. That's what it looked like at one point. We brought in a tunnel tank, we call it. It's a little walk-through tank that's filled with 10,000 neon tetras and some glass tetras and some cories, gold laser cories, just to give that initial, color as you enter into the aquarium. And that's actually, although one of our workers, he's a typical Peruvian, when I walk through it, my head hits the top of the tunnel. Peruvians tend to be smaller people. So that's looking through the tunnel tank at halfway through the construction. One thing we had to do though, well, that's put in the glass. They're triple pane glass. You can only get 1/4-inch glass there. So if you need something larger, you actually have to get glass that they anneal to each other. So you can't get thick glass. They're all glass panels that they glue together. That's not a crack. That's our big tank being filled with water. So first thing you gotta do is look for leaks. And boy, did we have leaks. We had leaks everywhere. The big tanks, we had leaks. The small tanks, we had leaks. The discus tanks, we had leaks. So that's what we ended up having to do. At one point, we even cemented the entire inside of the tank to try to stop the leaks. And the leaks wouldn't stop. So what we had to do is we had to break apart all the big tanks. The little tanks across, we were able to stop the leaks. Massive amounts of silicone. They even put in tar pitch in them. And the reason why they leaked is because if I were to use my brain, I would realize the wood we have here in the States is dried. It's kiln dried. There, that wood is probably a week old. And you know what happens when wet 2x4s and 4x4s start to dry off? They start to twist and bend. And no matter how many bolts and nuts we applied and how much epoxy, they would just crack. And so we had to start from scratch, which was one of those things you never want to do. So what we did is we imported tanks from a manufacturer in China. Which was an ordeal in itself. It took about 9 months to get them. They were shipped from the manufacturer to Lima, where they sat in the port for 45 days. Our import agent, who signed off for them and everything, we paid to have him ship the tanks to Iquitos, ran off with our money. They sat in the port for 45 days at $500 a day storage fee. We work with a lawyer there. He's on our board of directors. We went to him and said, what can we do? You know, can we sue this guy? What can we do? And he said, courts in Peru kind of work. We could sue him, but it may take 20 years. The best thing to do is absorb the money, walk away, and never talk to this guy again. So that's what we had to do. So they offloaded tanks. One of the problems with the new tank system is that we built our filtration system for the old tanks, which worked well, but when we brought these new tanks in, what we had to end up doing is build all these little individual filters for the tanks, because the tanks were at different levels. We couldn't get all the levels right, and they created microbubbles. And what microbubbles do, we don't think about it, what microbubbles do in fish, it gets under their skin, and the skin starts to erupt. And the first week we had water and cycled the tanks and everything. The first week we put in fish, we lost every fish in the aquarium, including 150 red spotted green discus, my pride and joy babies. So we had to just start jerry-rigging a bunch of little filters. We still use the 3 big filters, but that's for the big tank itself, and a couple systems that are exactly level, but we have about 10 of these smaller filters now that we're running simultaneously with the big filter. So we had our grand opening. That's my wife there cutting the ribbon with the governor's assistant, I don't know. The governor didn't want to come because everybody hates the governor, so he's afraid he would get bullied. Okay, well, let's see. Okay, so let's see. Oh, okay, we'll bypass that because that's a 10-minute video. If you want to see it later, I'll show you later, but we're running out of time. These are just some of the tanks that we have. We do have an invasive tank. We have gouramis there, we have guppies, and we have some baby tilapia in there just to teach the kids and the people about the invasive problem. Plastic plants, we don't have any light plants in underwater because of, we didn't want to run high output lights or really expensive lights. Hard to get good LED lights there. If you do, they're, you know, a LED light that may cost you $50 here in the US, costs $500 there. I'm cheap. My wife and I basically have supported the research center about 90%, so it's coming out of our pocket most of the time. Angelfish, red spotted angels, or black spotted angels. Another tank just showing some of the other fishes in the areas. This is double pane, has some of the bigger cichlids, pike cichlids, geophagus, peacock bass, and oscars. Little pez globo, the little puffers, Amazonian puffers with some glass tetras. Leaf fish, there's a leaf fish right in the middle here. This is our big tank. This is a tank that primarily has fishes that people fish for to eat. So we actually have a mural up here. There's a fisherman just off camera with a line in the water. You ask people, name the fish that they know from the river. They know about 5 or 6 fish because that's the fish that they catch and eat. So all these other fish they know nothing about. There's my discus tank, and you can see some of the smaller tanks off in the background. One of the problems we had with the tanks that we brought from China is that they started to bubble. The gel coat on the tank started to bubble. And I emailed the manufacturer and I said, hey, what's going on? Oh, that's normal. That happens all the time. Well, why didn't you warn us it was going to happen all the time? Because what happens is, not only does it bubble, it exudes this, we don't know what it is. We think it's a glue or something. And, you know, we put fish in, they'd start to die. So there's some toxic chemical in that. So again, we had to take all the water out, all the fish out. And then we fiberglassed over every single tank that we brought in. So it was nothing but problems. So again, we do have a terrarium there. We have transitioned from the land into the water to show them what you tend to find in each of those transitions. Again, this is the tunnel tank that you walk through with the tetras. Unfortunately, not the best picture. We do have a tank with stingrays. People there, if they're not in the fishing exporting industry, when they see a stingray, what they do is they kill it. Because you don't want to be walking in the creeks, in the river, and get stung by a stingray. Even though stingrays are endangered species, you're worried about your kids. You're not worried about some old ugly fish. You can follow us a lot of places. AmazonResearchCenter.org is our website. We're on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel, Amazon Research Center for Ornamental Fishes. You can find us on Instagram, 2 places, _Peru. That's just our main Instagram. And then we have the Aquario del Amazonas. That's just for the aquarium itself. And there is my email if you would like to get a hold of me, if you want to come volunteer, you're going to be in Iquitos, or you want to see the facility, you can do that. And the lesson learned is it's going to take 4 or 5 times more than you think it's going to be. It's going to take 10 times the amount of money. And there's always going to be unforeseen happenings. Tanks don't work, filters, fish die. You know, we all think about what happens in our tank, a fish dies. Well, you don't want dead and sick fish in your tanks if you're a public aquarium. So my best advice is don't have a public aquarium. Much less a public aquarium in another country that constantly on the phone with problems. And with that, I want to say thank you. Oh, I had more time. Yes, sir.
I have a whole bunch of questions.
Okay.
I'll limit them here. You showed the slide of the guys digging the small little ponds.
Yep.
How much, you said that part of the year they didn't work or whatever. What is the annual salary there?
The annual daily salary in the area is $10 a day.
$10 a day.
And that's for an average worker. It's, how do I make that go? So that's my wife showing a tour of the aquarium on YouTube. The fishermen, they're at money. The full red pencil fish that everybody wants now, everybody know the full red pencil fish, Sanipa. We buy them directly off the fishermen for $3 each. It's a good price. On the exporter list in Iquitos, if you can find them now, they're $25 each. And the problem now is the villagers that live in the area where the red pencil fish are found aren't letting people collect them anymore, because they saw all of a sudden everybody going in there and collecting the fish. In fact, there are 4 different full red pencil fishes that are from different locations. We only see one in the hobby, but there's actually 4 now. So depends on who you work with. In the past, some exporters would pay their fishermen in crack cocaine. And so the exporters want to pay as little as possible.
So your aquarium, I'm assuming it's for an educational purpose
Yep.
for the community. But do you also charge admission?
Yeah, we do charge admission.
Are you breaking even? Or?
No. Last week we had 30 visitors. It's a school year, so we know we're not going to make any money. We're hoping that the aquarium itself will be self-sustaining. In other words, pay for the workers that just work at the aquarium. Everything else we know we're never going to be able to be self-sustaining. And my wife and I went into this knowing that we would never make money out of this. If I told you how much we spent in 10 years, you would think I'm a moron for doing this. You're thinking, how can you retire now? But we made that choice a long time ago, and luckily my wife, believes the same way as I do.
My last question is, you have a breeding facility there. Are you actually exporting fish?
No, we don't do.
Just research? We
just do research. We are breeding fish to hopefully put them back into the wild. We were an exporter about 5 years ago, exported illegally some tigrinus catfish. They did not have the proper paperwork. The tigrinus were given to the university or the government research center that's near us and us. They were given 10,000. We were given 30. Within 2 months, they lost 10,000 fish in in those same months, ours doubled in size. And so the government actually wanted us to repatriate those fish into the wild, back where they were collected. But when they came and saw our facility, they actually wanted us to start a captive breeding program for the tigrinus catfish. So we're just waiting till those fish reach the size where they can start breeding. So, you know, the stuff that we breed is stuff that we're teaching people how to breed fish, or we're trying to repatriate these fish, reestablish stocks back into it. The red pencilfish you just saw, we have actually a population of 1,500, an insurance population. In case they are extirpated from the wild, we will have those 1,500 to try to breed them and then put them back into the wild. Because there's still thousands that are collected every year to be exported. You're welcome. We do have a nocturnal room. We have to see the nocturnal room. I still have like 5 minutes. So we also have a feeding tank that the kids can feed the fish, and my wife's going to throw some food in there. We have some pacu in there. You know, kids always like to see fish coming to the surface to splash. Let's see, there's some pacu and some achara catfish that actually will eat out of your hands. So, you know, the kids love to get splashed. And our walls are all painted. We had a artist come in and paint. I did not want a saltwater tank in there, but my wife talked me into it, and the kids just love it because they all know Nemo and Dory, and they want to see Nemo and Dory. You know, a blue tang like that here in the States, I can buy them in California for $20 each. That blue tang costs us $500. The prices of saltwater fish are outrageous in Peru. So we do have a nocturnal room, which was actually my idea. Everybody thought, no, we don't want that. But people don't go in the water at night. They're afraid of the water at night, so they never see these fish. It's primarily knife fish. We do have a lungfish in there. That's the very first fish. And wood cats. Well, wood cats are one of my favorite catfish. Just love wood cats. And so, you know, these are fish that they would never see. And so that's been a really good exhibit for us is the nocturnal room. And this doesn't bring it up, does it? Okay. Just tell me when I can stop. It says like 2 more minutes of the video, that's it.
What species of knife is that? We've got time.
I don't know my knife fish. We do have you saw the big electric eel, which is actually a knife fish, not an eel. Yes?
You mentioned something about a Schoner index or something?
Schoner index, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's just a simple algebraic formula that compares what you have against what's there.
It's just to find out what they're competing
It just finds out it's just an overlap of species, an overlap of what they eat, and it's a percentage that they eat of each one. I can email it to you. It's a really simple thing. So this is a wall. This is a saying from Chico Mendes, who is a worker in Brazil, who basically said, you know, when they first came into his land, he was fighting for the trees. Then he was fighting for the Amazon. Then afterwards, he realized he's fighting for all humanity to try to save these trees. And this is our tree of honor. This is where we put donors' names. You have to donate so much to get your name on the wall, painted on the wall. And the orange ones are people who've donated in honor of somebody else. So, you know, for people who have died, they want their names on the wall. And with that, that is it for the video. thank you all for your patience.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful. How can we help?
How can you help? Spread the word. We are a 501(c) nonprofit, so any donation is tax deductible if you like those types of things. You can just spread the word of what we do, and you can come volunteer.
It's easy to find the Amazon Research Center online.
AmazonResearchCenter.org is right there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.